Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to my channel. It's Brittany here with another video to help you guys live a happy, healthy, awesome life in a wheelchair. And today I'm going to do a sort of follow-up or part 2 to the video I did last week, no, the week before that, 2 weeks ago, on how much it costs me to pee in a single day. It got me thinking, partly because some people asked about other costs related to being paralyzed, how much it actually has cost me thus far in my lifetime to be paralyzed. So I decided to tabulate how much I have spent on adaptive equipment, medical supplies, all of that stuff that I require in order to live a happy life. And I did a spreadsheet and I got the numbers. So I'm going to share it with you guys. And this is just how much it's costed, how much it has cost me up until this point in my life. So I was paralyzed when I was 13, almost 14. So I didn't even really count the last month because I was in the hospital, and obviously didn't pay for anything because I was only paralyzed at the very end of my 13th year. So I started from age 14 and tabulated all of the figures for up until this month, I guess, of this year. I want to be clear that I'm not personally paying for all of these costs because I have insurance and there are programs where I live that do help pay for medical supplies for people like me. So in Alberta, where I live, there's a program called Aids to Daily Living, which is a program that subsidizes medical supplies. And over the course of my lifetime, they have helped subsidize a lot of these costs. And I have insurance from my husband's job that pays for most, if not all, of the medical supplies that I currently buy. So even though it costs a lot, I do have supports that help me with those costs, which is I'm super grateful for, and I realize that I'm very privileged to have. So if you are out there and you don't have help with your medical supplies, please look into programs. If you live in Alberta, please look into AADL, which actually just increased the amount they cover for medical supplies like catheters. They even included hydrophilic catheters in their new program for catheters so that people can get these catheters that you don't need to have lubrication for and that are actually better for you. They can get them subsidized, which you weren't able to do before in Alberta. So if you live in Alberta, please go and check out the new coverage. And if you need support for navigating the new coverage, I have a link in the description of this video where you can go be connected with a Coloplast care advisor who will help you figure out if you are eligible for the new coverage for catheters. We'll start with when I was first paralyzed, and the first thing I guess that would have had to have been bought for me was my wheelchair, which was $5,000 in 2000. So it was 1999 when I was paralyzed, but it would have been 2000 when I first got my wheelchair. So my first wheelchair, five grand right off the hop. That's when you find out how expensive, ridiculously expensive medical supplies are. You can buy a freaking car for $5,000. And yet somehow a wheelchair costs that much. Then after that, it was basically house modifications that my parents had to do in order for me to get home from the hospital. My parents decided to build a house rather than modify the one that we lived in because it was terrible. So my mom gave me the number of sort of the extra things that cost over and above what a regular house would have cost to build, because we're not going to put the whole house cost in what it costs to be paralyzed. You have to live in a house whether you're paralyzed or not. So the things that they did, like wider doors, things like that, that were just extra construction costs, was an additional $15,000 over and above the cost of the house construction. So not too bad actually when you think about it, because I think home modifications cost a lot more. So I think building from scratch is way cheaper to do the modifications. Okay, and then the lift inside my house, so that was like the construction cost, not including the lift and other things that I needed to live in the house. So we had stairs going upstairs and I needed a lift to get up there, and we had a platform lift when I lived at home, and that lift was $16,000. And then the supplies that my mom used to buy for me, like my catheters and things like that before I moved out of the house, in total was $36,000. So I just took the amount that my mom spent every month, which was $600, times it by 12, and then times it by however many years I lived at home. So then when I moved out of the house, I lived in apartments, and I didn't really have like costs for adaptations or anything like that because I didn't modify any of the apartments. So no costs there. But I did have things like toilet arms to help me get on and off the toilet, an Arco rail for my bed, which is like it's just a brand of a rail that you can twist all around. So I had that, and I think that was really it. I didn't really have anything other than that. So the toilet arms that I had like a set, 2 pairs just in case they went anywhere. That was $300, and then the Arca rail was an additional $350. And then my first adapted van that I got when I moved out of the house, the modifications were $6,000. It was super cost effective because my dad found used lifts and hand controls and things like that, and we just had to get those put in. So that's why it was so cheap, because that normally would have cost a lot more. And then when I met Joe and finished university, we moved into our first sort of rental house. We didn't buy this house, but it was a house and not an apartment. So it needed either a ramp or a lift to get in. And Joe decided to build a ramp, which cost $1,000 in construction material. So that was the sort of first cost of modifying my own home or making my own home accessible. And then, I forgot, in the other apartments that I had to have a bath bench because they had tubs. So the bath bench, I had 2 of them over the course of many years, and they cost around $160 each. So the 2 bath benches that I've had over the course of my years in a wheelchair were around $350 for both of them. And then when we moved into this house, so I lived in apartments, and then I lived in a rental house with Joe, and then we bought this house that I currently live in. We've lived here for almost 10 years, I think. Yeah, because Jamie was a baby. So we lived here for 10 years. And this house, again, I needed a way to get in the house. So I decided to get a lift because the ramp took up so much space in the other house, in the garage, and it just reduced the amount of space that we had to use the garage. And this garage was smaller, so we decided to use a lift. And that lift cost $5,000. The backyard lift in this house to get from the deck to the ground, it was $1,500 because I bought it used. So the lift that was $5,000 that's in the garage, we bought brand new, and it's a piece of junk. It always breaks. And the backyard lift, which is used, it was in a barn with mice, and it was just left out in the elements forever. It never breaks. It's awesome, so reliable. But it was $1,500, and then the trailer lift was $750. I try now as much as I can to buy used lifts because there's so many of them on Kijiji because people buy them for an aging, parent or grandparent or whatever, and then they pass away and they don't need it anymore. So then the lifts are really good quality, not used very much, and you can get them for a pretty decent price. So those are the lifts. Other things that I have started using in this house that I didn't use in the other house. This house, I have a small shower and I don't use the bathtub, so I needed a bath seat and not a bath bench. And that cost $100. I still have the same one. I haven't bought a new one in all these years because it just hasn't needed to be bought. I have had to replace the cushions, but I've just taken the cushions that I had on my bath bench and put them on this one because they're sort of the same cushions. So I haven't had to replace anything or spend any more money on bath seats or bath benches. And then I discovered a few years ago the Action Gel Pad, which is the thing that I use on my shower chair to make it more soft for my butt. And that thing cost $190. My toilet seat cover things that I use in this house that I discovered, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago from a friend, those cost $79. So I was going to say $90 with shipping. So there's that. And then I have all my cushions that I've used on my wheelchairs, and I've had a number of them over the years. So I just added up sort of the ballpark of what they all cost together, and it's been $5,000, which I think is really cheap because I don't replace my cushions that much, which I should, because you should be replacing your cushions every like 1 or 2 years, and I'm terrible at doing that. So the cost of my cushions is really low compared to a lot of people's, I think. My supplies in university. So I talked about the supplies before I left home and how much those cost. Then the supplies when I was in university. Over the course of the time that I was in university and before I started washing catheters, I paid $84,000 in supplies. That's a lot of money. And when I started washing catheters, my supplies went down drastically. So over the course of the 5 years or so that I was washing catheters, that cost me $12,000. My medical supplies cost me $12,000. And then I went to not washing catheters again. And I was using non-hydrophilic catheters, so cheap catheters. And my medical supplies during that time were $9,600 because it was only 2 years that I was using sort of the cheap catheters. So that was a short amount of time that I was tabulating all the supplies in. And then for the last, since 2005, since 2017, I've been using hydrophilic catheters, and the cost of those over the course of these last 5 years has been, it's all my medical supplies. So when I say medical supplies, just to clarify, it's not just catheters, it's gloves, it's suppositories, it's the blue pads I sleep on and use when I'm doing my bowel routine, it's all of that stuff, wipes, all of that stuff. So that it was $90,000 over the course of these last 5 years, which is crazy. And then my third wheelchair, which is my new wheelchair, my RGK, I just got that a couple years ago, and that cost $13,000. And then my van, which I also got a couple years ago, and the modifications to my van cost $15,000. So over the course of, the last 23 years or so being in a wheelchair, the cost to be paralyzed has been $329,140, which is crazy. As you can see, being paralyzed is expensive. And the thing, at least for me, that costs the most is medical supplies. The catheters that I need every month, the suppositories, the blue pads, the lubricating jelly, the things that I need in order to go to the bathroom and that I have to keep replenishing because I don't reuse them. It's a little disheartening, to be totally truthful, to think that over the course of my lifetime, it's probably going to cost me a total of about $1 million. And what other things could I have done with all of that money? It's probably not even possible for people to pay this out of pocket if there wasn't programs that help subsidize the cost of this, because it's astronomical. Don't forget to go check out the link in the description of this video if you are currently struggling with having to pay for medical supplies and would like some support in helping figure out if there's funding for you, especially if you live in Canada. I hope that wherever you live, there's programs out there that help subsidize the cost of your medical supplies so that you aren't stuck paying out of pocket for these astronomically high-priced medical supplies that really shouldn't be as high priced as they are, but they are. Anyway, if you have any questions about my medical supplies or anything I've talked about in this video, just leave it in the comments and I'll do my best to answer it. If you have other questions or video ideas, leave those in the comments too. That's it for today, guys. I will catch you on another video. Bye, guys.